So these gorgeous dogs standing in front of me, in front of you, are Teso, and Cammy. Teso's the big guy. There's a story to tell about these dogs. A lot of a story. So when they were about 6 months old, I think, I sold them to a woman in Portland, so 4 hours from here, so 5 hours, that had 2 special needs children. She had really good intentions. I've learned some things about how to look for a buyer of an LGD, and she was someone who really liked to be able to micromanage her life, probably in part because she needed to do that with her children. It was pretty hard to micromanage an LGD. They don't look to you for their every thought. And so she got pretty frustrated with these guys fairly quickly, and COVID hit, and she had brand new property, brand new goats, never lived with goats. She didn't know what to do with them. I mean, didn't know how to change their behavior, what to expect of their behavior. The kids are at home. It got crazy pretty quickly. She put a shock collar on one of these dogs. That's a breach of contract for me. That means that I now own both dogs. So they came home to me, and they came home a little spooked, a little insecure, but not super traumatized. The female pup, Cammy, was just kind of an airhead, just kind of all over the place, didn't make a really strong connection with me. He's always looked for a connection of some sort, but she just kind of had distanced herself from being invested in people, which makes absolute sense to me, doesn't it? So then after about 6 months of being home and building their confidence, this person came along that I thought, and she was an experienced LGD person, I thought, who had several pairs of dogs over the years, all but one of which she described as failed dogs, or dogs that didn't meet her expectations. She rehomed them to other working homes, and they did fine by themselves away from her. She split them up, put them in new homes, and reported that all of them were great instead of bad like when she had them. So, okay, that's another one I should have. When people tell you that, when people rave about their dogs, that's actually a comment on their ability to communicate with those dogs also. And people that have complaints about dogs ran into communication issues with the dogs and couldn't get where they wanted to with them. So I sent her these dogs, drove them, she's in Massachusetts, drove them all the way to Illinois, and she had them for about a year and didn't do well with them from the start. And one of the things that she did that I want to talk a lot about, it's called extinction, and I'm going to be very careful not to do that to these guys while I'm standing here talking. So if a dog has a behavior that they know really well, that has a high reinforcement history, and all of a sudden it doesn't work, dogs can become really frantic. It's punishing to them. They can become very frustrated. They can do all kinds of coping things because it's really hard on them. It's like if you put a quarter in to buy a Coke. I realize I'm dating myself, but if you put a quarter in to buy a Coke and you did it every day of your life, and then all of a sudden you came along and it didn't, you're going to pound the machine, you're going to kick at it, you're going to try more coins, you're going to do all kinds of things to get it to work like it used to. And then maybe get mad and stomp off, and who knows what else. That goes on with dogs too. So my dogs know that they can please people and want to please people. So they look for eye contact and they mand in front of me, which is what she's doing. So this woman decided that she would communicate with these dogs by using mental telepathy, and I'm not kidding. So she would go out with the dogs, and I'm going to demonstrate this with my back to them because I don't want them to see this. She'd go out with the dogs and she'd put her hands wherever, and she wouldn't make eye contact, like they're here. She wouldn't make eye contact with the dogs, but she would visualize what she wanted them to do, their bodies to do, and wait for them to do it. Well, for my dogs, she's not making eye contact, so they're not getting reinforced for eye contact, She's not appreciating that they're manding. Manding means you'll always put your hand on the dog and snuggle, because that's a give and take. It's the dog asking for attention in a very nice way, and so he deserves attention. Well, these dogs, after she did that for a little while, would start to jump up in the air, put their feet on her, grab her clothes, grab her arms, at which point she would leave in disgust and say they were bad dogs. And what these dogs learned is that what used to work doesn't, and so they started to doubt themselves. They started to get really insecure about themselves. Dogs that don't feel secure become very unpredictable dogs. And there was a point where she was willing to give them up. I'd been trying for a long time to get them back. Kim Cromer helped me find a transport person, and they went on a ground transport to me. Spent $2,500 to bring these guys home. Worth every penny, I might add. But she had told the ground transport guy, who's really a sweetheart of a man, trying to find a puppy face over there. You see way the puppy face. There's another one on the other side of the post. Let's see if I can get him. You guys are adorable. Let's see here. There they are, puppy faces. She had told this man that they were dogs that would bite him, that they were collar sensitive, so don't reach for their necks. And so for 9 days in this transport, and she had put collars on them, he told her he wasn't ever going to take the dogs out of the truck. They go in these 4x4 stalls that they can see each other, and they're not going to come out till they get here. Well, she didn't believe him, so she put the collars on so tightly that when the dogs got here, I couldn't put my fingers under them. And for that 9 days, he didn't know that, because she called him every day and told him to be careful not to get bitten by these dogs. So not only did they have 9 days of transport, but they had 9 days of collar so tight that they didn't eat very much. On the trip, he reported to me, when he got here, he kind of put into the trailer and said, the dogs are in there. And I hadn't seen him for a long time. I didn't know what I was getting into, but the dogs are definitely coming out of the trailer. So I just got in and talked to him and reached over the tops of them and put harnesses on them so that I wasn't pulling on collars. I hadn't checked the collars at that point. And walked them right out of the truck on long lines to a pasture that they'd been in before. There's my dog. And took the harnesses off, and I'm moving slowly and carefully around them, and they're not giving me any reason to think that there's a problem. And as I stroke down their necks and run into those collars, I realize how tight they are, and he'd been cautioning me not to touch the collars, but that's not going to happen. They're not going to keep wearing those. So I took the collars off, and the dogs were sweet with me, barked a lot, raced around a lot. Sorry. There were dogs across the fence from them, Rocco and Stella, and they barked at those guys and just generally ran around and threw four-letter threats all over the place, and were just really undone by their changed situation. About a week after they got home, I went out back and found that somebody in here, one of those guys, had dragged one of my other dogs, Rocco, partly through the fence and had chewed his face up pretty extensively. And I believe that it's because of how insecure these dogs felt and how just generally scared they were. So I moved those dogs from a 4x4 holes field fence to behind a 5-foot non-climb fence so that they couldn't get purchased. They couldn't grab any other dogs. And that's where they've been for almost a year, in that field. They haven't been out of that field for almost a year until yesterday. This is Tansy that I'm pointing the camera at just because she's cute. Tansy lost her partner 2 days ago. He was 9. She's 9. That's a story for a different day. Anyway, to my surprise and my great delight, they walked off into this field and they just went to work. They were calm and soft and thoughtful, happy. did a super great job, had an easy day. Later in the day I needed to move them down here, so I brought them down here. So last night they spent the night. I have a pony between fences. I didn't want to take this too far and worry about anybody not being nice while I was sleeping, but just the other side of where they are the puppy kids somewhere. You wouldn't believe how hard it is to find things in a viewfinder. There they are. So the puppies have been next to them all night. These two dogs haven't been around puppies since they were one. And they're just doing great. They're just serene and happy, and they've just come a long way. And all I did to get them back to this point is just show them over and over again that when they were around me, they were successful. There was nothing they ever did that disappointed me. And if they did, and that's our secret, then I would just change the way I asked and change how I interacted with them so that then they were giving me something that I wanted. For instance, toenails. This particular dog is just terrified of having anybody touch her feet, and I can imagine how that got that way. So I have somebody help me with her, and we sit on the ground with her, and I just feed her dehydrated chicken over and over and over and over and tell her that she's incredible, while Becca trims her feet in short order, and then we sit and we tell her how wonderful she is. And she's gotten to a point where we don't put a leash on her or restrain her at all. She stays because overall the experience is pretty cool. So that's a lot of progress. I'm really glad to know this about these dogs. I didn't know how they would do in a new environment. I hadn't been brave enough to try it. Finding a dog that's hurt is very traumatic. I was wrought with guilt. It had never happened like that before, but once is enough. But since that time, they have been sweet across the fence. They have 6 dogs across from them. Last night they had a bunch of different dogs across from them here, and they just look like this. They just look like happy, successful dogs.